Hi everyone, I'm Rebecca East, and today I'll be demonstrating how to salvage wet paper materials after a water emergency using my basic household supplies. Some of the items that we're going to be using for this collection include I have a postcard that I got from my bridal shop when I was buying my dress for my wedding. I have a business card that I'm going to see how that holds up. It has this shiny material on the front. I have a piece of printer paper that I wrote my name on with different pens and highlighter. The pen's here, kind of like a gimmicky Disney pen, a flowery business pen, a blue Bic pen, which I really like, and a highlighter, just to see how the ink holds up after being submerged in water. I also have a paperback book to go through the book preservation process, and a few different magazines from different companies that I use for my job as a programmer in a library. Now, the reason why we go through this process is because these could be a part of an archival collection. While these are my personal items that I don't hold value to anymore, if they're a part of a collection, they could be preserving personal papers, community records, local history that may not be able to find anymore, which is why we go through the preservation process. Some of the household items I have gloves to protect myself in case there's mold. I have toothpicks to help separate paper, parchment to kind of keep those papers separated. I have a baggie because I'm going to try the freeze drying process. And then, of course, a baker's rack for drying, clothespins, paper towels, and hangers. Now, if I had a clothesline situation, I would use the clothespins to hang those on that, but I don't in my very small house. So, attaching them to something like hangers, hanging them up in a very well aerated room with less humidity, that's what I would be doing. Also, special mention, I have some save the dates as well that I'm going to be testing the ink in the water. All right, we're going to go ahead and move over to my bathroom so we can start submerging them. So what we have here, we are now in my bathroom where we have a bathtub filled with some water. This is supposed to represent any flood damage, or say if a pipe bursts within your facility. This is kind of here to represent that. So we're going to start with the business card, the postcards, and the save the dates. Kind of smush them in here to really get them wet. Try and keep these cards separated so they can get saturated. Now we have the Oriental Trading Magazine, the Lakeshore Magazine. Just curious to see if they use two different types of ink and maybe different paper. We have the paperback book that we're going to submerge, really get it wet in here. And then my printer paper. Trying to keep it as flat as possible. We're going to let this sit in submersion here for a good 10 to 15 minutes, and then we will come back to see what kind of condition they're in. So stay tuned. All right, so it's been about 10 to 15 minutes of our items here. I'm just going to go ahead and transfer them to my kitchen for this next process, and I'll see you in a moment. All right, so we are now back at my kitchen counter with all of my resources. Here we have our paperback book, where we see it has some lift and curling. The same goes for the business card. Now the postcard here looks like the ink is now bled through. It's definitely disappeared. We have our two magazines that are very, very wet. And then, of course, our printer paper. Looking at it here, we have a little bit of ripping down here, so it is a little fragile. but we can also notice that our highlighting is gone. As for the pens, looks like they held up pretty well. No really bleeding, maybe a little bit in the R right here from that first pen, which is going to be the flower pen here. The second one, which is my Disney pen, looks like it held up pretty well. That's a little bit of cat hair courtesy of my cats. And then the Bic blue pen held up really well. I would say it might be one of the best. So we're just gonna leave this on the rack here so it'll air dry. As for our save the date cards, it looks like there's been a little bit of discoloring, some folds in the card itself, so the paper is starting to disintegrate. We're gonna leave that here as well. Same goes for this one here. A little bit of paper disintegration to the touch, but the barcode held up pretty well. Now, as for these two, there is some curling in it and the postcard. I'm gonna use the freeze drying method and put them in this baggie and put them in the freezer. So we'll put that in here. Now, for the sake of resources, you'll probably put them in separate baggies. I, however, have this really big one, so I'm just going to set them in this baggie here. And the reason why we do this process is because, say we have 1,000 water damaged pieces that we're trying to preserve, it's gonna take time to go through these. So we'll put this in the freezer here. I'm going to move some things in my freezer to put them on a flat surface. And we will set them here. So there's our postcard and the business card. Now, as for these items here, we also have the rest of the save the date. I don't have a super huge rack, so what I will do instead is I'm gonna lay down some parchment paper. You gotta use what you have at home. Right, so set this here. And on the parchment paper. And I'm just going to tuck this under so it stays flat. Now, another method you could use is you could also use your paper towels instead of your parchment paper if you don't have parchment paper. Or if you have your clothesline, we also have our clothesline pins that you can attach to hangers here or put them on a direct clothesline. And of course, so if you're doing the air drying method, you would of course have a fan circulating in this room and in this area to try and help that drying process. Never using a hot air blow dryer. And the reason why is because that is the fastest way that you can start curling your paper and prevent it from laying flat ever again. So moving on to the book here, we see it has that curling. We're going to open it up. Definitely has that separation in the spine, so being very careful. Using any tools that you can have at home to help separate the pages is going to be worthwhile because, as you can tell, they're very thin and very fragile. So this is going to be a very slow process. And what you'll want to do is you'll take a piece of paper towel, lay it down, and this will help prevent the pages from sticking and also help them drying without being connected to each other. And other tools that you can use, if you have any paint spatulas, anything that has a thinner edge, try and help break up these sticking pages. You can see it's kind of stuck together here. Get that sort of lip and separate the pages. I'm going to try another method with these toothpicks to try and separate the pages. Using that toothpick. And also trying to get in. There we go. Just to separate that page here. To lift it without ripping it. And using another paper towel to separate the pages here. Now, as you can notice, I'm using my hands to do this process. I know that my belongings don't have mold in them. We also just freshly soaked them, so they're not going to have mold in them as of this moment. But if this was going to be a really older collection, you don't know how long it's been sitting within the archives, dust, mold, who knows what kind of condition it's going to be in. That's where you would use your gloves. All right, I will leave y'all to it and give it about 24 hours or so, maybe even longer, and eventually these products will dry. Now, important thing to note, you can help preserve these objects and make them better, but they are never going to be back to their original condition. Water is going to provide some damage, but our jobs as future archivists is to help preserve them the best that we can, using methods like blotting, air drying, freezing, anything that we can do to help preserve them in their best condition that we can provide is the best way that we can do that. Of course, some of inks are going to bleed, others are going to hold up better than others, but these details matter when assessing what to preserve, digitize, or document in the future. So most of these items would probably have some form of digitization if possible. And if that is the case and those qualities are great, we would probably not go through this process unless it's necessary. But all right, I will leave you guys here and I look forward to hearing from you soon. Bye.